Brian Borgen here with Reelwind. The movie I watched, The Highwaymen, available on Netflix. It takes place in the 1930s, and it's based on actual events in the capture, if you will, of the legendary Bonnie and Clyde. The main actors in this movie, Kevin Costner is Frank, and Woody Harrelson is Manny. They're two retired Texas Rangers. And the movie is less about the romanticized depiction of Bonnie and Clyde being celebrities and just being rebellious, but more the focus is on the pursuit of taking them down, of hunting them down because of their sociopathic behavior and kind of murderous crime spree that they went on. This is the group, the law enforcement that tracked them down, and so it's from that perspective, which is a little different. It's interesting to see that part of it. So the movie does not portray the couple as this great-looking heartthrobs, again, just out being rebellious and just running from the law. And so this movie really avoids a lot of the crimes, the actual crimes, and all the multiple gunfights and all that, although there are a couple in there. But it's more about Frank and Manny being brought out of retirement after a long career, not really well respected or trusted, I guess, amongst the law enforcement. But they are older than governor of Texas. Figures, this might be the best shot at really tracking down Bonnie and Clyde after thousands of law enforcement officers have been unsuccessful in doing that. So Frank and Manny are bringing their skills to really kind of run down leads that others had overlooked. And although physically they may not be as much up to the task as other law enforcement, they're bringing their years and years of developed skills and knowledge and everything to do something a little different. And it's a fun movie to watch. And again, this is based on actual events, but again from a different perspective, which is neat to see. So rather than the focus being on Bonnie and Clyde and all their crimes and that side of things, the focus is much less on them, and it's more as the lawmen start to uncover leads. They're coming up on the aftermath of a lot of the crimes rather than showing the crimes. It's more, okay, this happened, and taking the lead from there. So that is more the focus of this. And they're two formerly retired Texas Rangers. Not, I guess, a whole lot of expected from them, and they are starting to uncover leads, and they're getting more information than others had been to this point. So it's coming from that kind of again perspective. The movie really avoids again a lot of the theatrical gunfights and all the blood and guts of all the crimes, and more about the leads and finding them. And although Bonnie and Clyde do garner a bit of celebrity during that time, this is again in the 1930s, so the media coverage then obviously different than it would have been much later, 10, 20, 30 years later. So word kind of gets around a little bit as who they are, so they do garner somewhat of celebrity, but it's really the Rangers that just kind of figure a way. They got to figure out a way to do again what others have not been able to, and so the final sequence after all this searching and finding leads and tracking them, they're getting closer and they know they are. The final scene actually brings in photos of the actual event. So whereas much of the movie is not so much about the grossness of a lot of the crimes that they did, all the murders and robberies that they did, but the final sequence, I guess, as close to historical perspective as it can be. is it's neat to see with that, and then actual photos of the final. So it's not, this isn't, more, this is less Hollywood, I guess, and more, bringing in actual facts about this group. It's a really interesting movie. It's again, it's not over theatrical, graphics and all that. It's it's got the old Tommy guns and the clothing, everything, of course, during that era. But again, it's really, really well acted, I think, which really, really carries this movie. Definitely worth watching for sure. I would give this, a good 4.5 out of 5. Just because of the little different perspective of it. It's not the romanticized, typical, bad, follow the bad guys and them, getting all the attention. This is the guys that put themselves out there to figure this out, track them down, and in that really nasty crime spree. So again, I definitely think it's worth watching for sure. And again, this is Brian Borgen at Overture West Ashley for Reelwind, and I will see you next week.
This is going to be a long video. Hey everyone, it's me, Taylor Lee, with Overture Buckhead South, and you are watching The Reelwind. So, like I said at the beginning, this is going to be a lot of information simply for the fact of the movie. This week we watched The Highwaymen. It's a 2019 Netflix film. It's about 2 hours and 12 minutes long, and the time period it's based in is 1934. The reason I say this is going to be a lot of stuff to cover is because this movie pertains to Bonnie and Clyde, but not in the way that you think. It actually is the story about the two men that kind of brought the duo to justice, if you will. So, even though the movie is about Bonnie and Clyde, it's not truly about them. In the movie, we really don't see them that much. I think maybe they only have 1 or 2 speaking lines at all, and it's not even directed to the audience. It's more or less, so I guess, it's believable because, I say believable, but it's more or less to make the film look more natural, because if they didn't say anything to anybody, that would be really weird. But Clyde is, about 25 during the time of this film, and he's definitely the smooth operator, if you can say that, based on how people talk about him and the way that they portray him. Bonnie is 23. She's known to be very beautiful and very elegant and almost like this figurehead for women, at least visually speaking, during this time period. And we see her being depicted in this film as like a ruthless and relentless woman in a lot of these scenes. And that's pretty much all we really get from the Bonnie and Clyde character. One of the other characters from the film is Chief Lee Simmons. He is a professional with this kind of tender feel to him. He comes off as very fatherly in the way he converses with his peers and with others that he works with or that he interacts with. He's very straight-laced in a sense of how he looks to come by justice. And with that, I guess, he's willing to kind of go over the head of the governor to kind of protect the overall citizen or population of not only his town, but others because of the whole Bonnie and Clyde situation. That also brings us to the mayor character, or I guess not mayor, the governor is what she really is. Governor Ma Ferguson, people call her Ma. You would think a very motherly character. And yes and no to that. She represents herself in the public eye as a very nurturing caregiver in a way, but everything she does is for the public and is for their benefit, and that she has their best intention in mind. But behind the scenes, you kind of see a different light of it. You kind of see this more, how should I say this? This woman that's more concerned of her imagery and how she comes across, and even if it's for the greater good, she's not going to cave in to it or be okay with it because she's more concerned about how it's going to affect her in the long run. Like when the two other main characters that I'm about to bring you guys into were brought onto the scene, she was completely against it from the beginning, even though Chief Lee Simmons wasn't. And that was primarily because she didn't think they could cut it, and she thought it was going to cause them, or cause her, humiliation in the end result. But you kind of see her as this figurehead, very to the point, behind the scenes, like takes no crap. Sorry. Kind of woman, but again, she's more concerned for herself and her appearance than she is really over safety, if I'm being honest. But as I said, this brings us into our other two like primary characters, which are the home-hitting characters for this film. And the first one is the former Texas Ranger, Frank Hamer. And he's seen as this very devoted husband, very domesticated in a way, because he went from being this ex-Texas Ranger who wields guns and is all about justice to being like this very doting, quiet husband in a way. So we see that you can tell that he's hardworking, very diligent. When it comes to his job, you see him have this very hard and cold demeanor about him, which is slightly different than what we see at home. But I mean, even at home, he seems like a very quiet and keeps close to the vest kind of guy. He almost feels like he's supposed to be that kind of stereotypical jaded cop in a lot of ways, but still with good intentions. And he actually has a partner who is the other main character of the entire movie. His name is Benjamin Maney Galt. Yeah, that's his whole name. That's Hamer's former partner. He actually refers to Hamer as Poncho in the whole movie, which goes back to their Texas Ranger days. We see Maney as this kind of family-driven guy. We open up to his character being in a very different situation than Frank Hamer. So Maney is actually living with his daughter and son-in-law and their kids, so his grandson, and his character opening, and he feels kind of like a burden to them. So he's trying really hard to kind of pull his weight and to kind of be there for them, because you can tell that he doesn't want to burden them or feel like he isn't part of helping with this support system for the family. Even though his daughter says, like, it's okay, but I mean, I think we've all been there before, wanting to help when we feel like we might be a burden. You almost feel sorry for him at the start. But I mean, when you get exposed to like some of the background people or other situations of people during that time, it's like it could be a lot worse. In comparison to his partner, Manny is a very laid-back guy. So compared to Hamer, Manny is a very laid-back character. He's the very warmer feeling guy, if you will, the funnier one, the kind of more guy. I know that's like a very horrible way to try and describe somebody, but honestly, that's the best way that I can think of describing his character in comparison to Hamer. He's also a little more level-headed in how he tries to take on different problems that they're facing, the way that he tries to go about getting the information that they need, or the way that he interacts with people. At one point, Hamer is telling him to go talk to somebody, and when Manny's like, basically, well, why do I have to do it? Hamer's like, because you're the more sociable one. And I feel like that's very true. I didn't think about that until he said it, but that's a perfect way to describe his attitude and his character is more sociable. Also, Manny, to that comment actually, says, no, I'm just really good at BSing. And that is also very true. He is also very good at that, which kind of goes along with this kind of like attitude, I guess. Another slightly essential, but not too essential character to Manny and Hamer is Ted Hinton, I believe that's his last name, who shows up kind of in the beginning of the movie. He's actually Bonnie and Clyde's old schoolmate, is what they say, and he serves as the identifier for Hamer and Manny when it comes to the last stand that is inevitably coming for Bonnie and Clyde. He also is able to provide them with personal details about their character and kind of who they were, how they got to this point, just kind of give them a little bit of insight to who Bonnie and Clyde are. Ted also he serves as one of these characters that gives Bonnie and Clyde not a personal feel, but a human characteristic to them. He serves as this tether to their past before they were this big thing. He kind of serves as this connection of a more humane and humanistic side to these cold-blooded killers in a way, which also kind of paints you a different picture of a side to Bonnie and Clyde that nobody really thinks of, and that's the fact that they were also human too, and people did care about them. They had relationships with people from back in their school days, people that knew a whole different side of who they were. And I think that's a very interesting thing to think about because, like I said, not many people probably think about that, and I definitely can't think of a movie that really portrayed that. So it was really nice to kind of have that kind of guy. It also kind of showed help. It also kind of helped lean into this innocence of the characters, or once having innocence of the characters, because you have this kid that did kind of grow up with them and knew them personally, who is their age essentially, so in his 20s as well, like 23, 25, and he's now a part of this police force, and he's this fresh-faced, go-getting young kid that hasn't become as hard and cold as maybe Maney or Hamer have become after going through everything they have gone through. So it's kind of like, in a sense, with this inevitable ending for Bonnie and Clyde, in a way he's losing that naivety or that innocence. So yeah, but so it's just kind of like taking this hardcore cold concept and also showing you this other side of it that we don't really pair with stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting. Another character, she doesn't really play that big of a role, but we do see her a bit in the beginning, and that is Hamer's wife, Gladys. He calls her Gladdy. She's very strong-willed, very protective, a little stubborn, but also very supportive. She obviously loves her husband very much and doesn't want to see anything happen to him, and doesn't really want him to take on this job, but at the same time, she loves and supports him. So she very relentlessly, maybe relentlessly is the wrong word, she says goodbye in a manner of which shows that she doesn't really want to, but at the same time she knows that that's what he wants to do, is take on this job, and she's willing to support him in that way of saying, like, it's okay, and I made you sandwiches for the road. So that kind of shows you where his support system comes in, and how that kind of has a driving force behind what he's doing and kind of where he's going, in a sense of following this end to a justifiable point. Visually speaking, the movie itself stuck with the time period being represented, which was, again, 1934. The clothes were very accurately depicted, location-wise, considering how recently they filmed this film. Stayed very accurate in terms of, like, what you would see in terms of roadways or construction or highways, things like that, to that nature. The attention to detail to, like, cars and other props as well, and language, and little things like that was also very indicative of the time period, and of what was going on in those areas at that point. So that was really nice as well. So there wasn't any, like, snafus or anything that kind of took you away from being in the movie. Even though it is, like, kind of a drama and crime movie, there's some really funny one-liners. I'm a sucker for a good, funny banter back and forth, and you get a lot of that between some of the characters, especially between Maney and Hamer. And I honestly laughed out loud quite a few times. I really liked the way that Maney and Hamer's friendship was portrayed. How, again, in like every love story, how two opposites attract. In a sense, that's how friendships are also displayed in a lot of movies. I really like to see how they supported each other and how they kind of combated each other's weaknesses and helped build each other up, and how they just kind of went on this journey together and from where they were coming from. So in a way, you get the sense that Maney and Hamer are a little out of their league because they are coming out of retirement. You see them being slightly rusty but willing to rise to the occasion. They practice. They still try to keep up with the younger, newer big dogs. Even though they are, again, coming out of retirement in the film and they are a little rusty, you know, an old dog still got some good tricks. And that really shows in the way that they come about finding little clues or putting things together with the case files, and inevitably how they end up tracking down Bonnie and Clyde. Another thing that they did in the film, which also was something that I said happened with them using Ted's character, and that was giving Bonnie and Clyde this more human characteristic. They did that again with Clyde, who really isn't seen or referenced as much as Bonnie, but they were able to give Clyde this more human aspect by having his father talk about when Clyde was younger, when he was a child, and what he was like. And Clyde's father had that conversation in the movie with Hamer, and it gave you this more humanistic sense of, again, this cold-blooded killer that had been painted for all of us. The music was great. Overall, the film did stick pretty closely to accuracy in the real life case. Another thing that I really liked is that at the end, they, like right before the credits, they do have real images of, like historical images of what was going on, along with some facts. Like one of the things that was mentioned at the end was that 2,000 people showed up for Bonnie's funeral and 15,000 showed up for Clyde's. In like 1935, Ma actually ended up leaving office, and the Texas Rangers were actually reinstated after all of this. And that also kind of brings back the whole thing with Ma's characteristics of her person being very motherly out in the open view, but how behind closed doors she's a little more self-conscious about how she's going to be perceived, because we know that how much she detests the Texas Rangers and how she didn't want Hamer to be a part of this job at all, and how she just knew that they weren't going to succeed and all this other stuff. But then you see her taking credit for everything that unfolded, and how she knew that by bringing him on, it was going to turn out great and all this other stuff. And then you see Hamer denying an interview about the takedown, and his partner telling the person that asked him to take the interview, like, shame on you. It kind of shows, again, that sense of justice and how sometimes hard decisions and stuff like that are made in defense of the overall good of a community or the overall good of a nation or a state or whatever. and how that can be a really hard decision to make. And in the end, they did kill these two people, and they're being rewarded as heroes for it. But at the end of the day, they see it a little differently, even though they know that it was in the name of justice. Like, they don't want fame and glory for it. Their reward is knowing that they have inevitably saved other people, especially other officers, from dying, and how hard that is, but how everybody outside of this group of officers, or who are outside law enforcement, don't see that aspect of the situation. How for them it's just about media and naming and fame and glory and all this other stuff. So there's that. But yeah, I really liked how the ending kind of like came together and stuff. This movie actually got me thinking about the real Bonnie and Clyde, especially because it did have those facts and all that other stuff. So there's actually going to be another video to this. This was the film review. And the next video is actually going to be a little bit of history about the real case, the story behind the Highwaymen. Going back to the movie, I give it, honestly, I'm going to say a 5 out of 5 Fords V8, yeah. 5 out of 5 Ford V8s. If you're interested in finding out more information about Bonnie and Clyde and about the Highwaymen, you can join us in Behind the Reelwind, which will also be posted. And I'll see you there if you're interested in that. That's the end of this video. Thanks for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we would love to know your opinion of this movie. You can leave us a comment below and let us know what you think. And until that, see you next time.